Record. Yeah, it's recording. And so thank you both very much for making the time to talk to me. I'm so excited to learn more about this.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Yeah, we already had such a great time with the last joint meeting. It was incredible conversation and how everything just so naturally seemed to roll on together, and quite impressive that so many people from around the globe can create such a feeling of togetherness in such a short time. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's nice when we manage to connect over boundaries on the same, isn't it? As you said, it's like we're in political space, completely different, geographic space, but completely different. But in terms of mind space, it seems like we're very together, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's the same kind of threads, the same narrative, and so it's interesting. It's perhaps it's part of this new normal, isn't it? Where we get on Zoom. Before we used to say we are on teleconference, we are not offline. Let's meet. Now we assume that's normal to talk on video conference and to create a global network that way, and that's okay. Tell me, just for some people who don't know you, and I mean some very basic, and because of the language as well, what is the Onkruidenier? How is it pronounced and what does it mean?
Yeah, so it's pronounced Onkruidenier. And I think we started this, it was like a project. It started out as a project in our own, like from our own practice. We both had our individual practice. And it was around 2013 when we moved to a new home together, and looking through our book collections, because we're both like collectors of a lot of books. We had a lot of books the same, but Yomar had quite a treasure of books from your grandparents.
Yeah, and one of those books, it was full of illustrations of wild plants that you can find in the city. And beautiful illustrations with descriptions about the plants that we would consider weeds. And in the back of the book was an entire chapter with recipes that to make different kinds of sauces or soups or other dishes based on wild plants that you can find in the city and that you normally just walk past. In this chapter my grandmother made some notes because she was I found out that she was harvesting a lot of these wild plants when she was taking care of her children in the 60s. And so there were some notes like you have to add more of this plant, or it's more delicious when you do this, or
put in less sugar because
exactly that's kind of
better for you.
Advices.
Why was that special for you? What caught your attention when you were looking at this?
Well, I thought it was very special because Ronald and I both have a background in landscape architecture and in art. And especially during the time that we were studying landscape architecture, we had to learn thousands of different plants and trees, and especially for how you can use those kind of plants and trees when you're making kind of urban planning. But mostly we learned how to use them in a very functional way.
Yeah, or aesthetics, or
exactly. So the way we were taught about plants was not in a very cultural way. And when we found out that my grandparents were already using wild plants in their daily daily life. We got very interested in that because, also because of the stories that are behind plants, the rituals or traditions. So it opened for us a kind of very new perspective on the plants that we learned and that we we're already working with for many years. That's what we found very interesting.
So help me understand, because I have some books of my grandmother in the back there, and maybe 10 or 20 of those. and I haven't had there's some sort of sensitivity that I need to wake up, because I didn't have all these thoughts that you had. So you look at your grandmother's books, and beyond, I mean, I see recipes, which potentially I'd like to, when I look at my grandmother's books, which potentially I want to make and to eat. There's some affectional value, because it's an object that I kept from her with a bit of history. But beyond that, you saw that as an indicator of the relationship with food and with the ingredients that was different. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yeah, especially because when we moved to this specific area in Amsterdam, we discovered that within 5 minutes walking, we could choose from 7 different supermarkets. So
wow.
that was, that thought was like kind of,
Yeah, I think also what really opened up our eyes, like both growing up in a rural area, then moving to a city, you grow accustomed to going to the shop every day to buy your food, to prepare your own food, or to do a takeaway, or go out for dinner, and you don't even question where the origin of your food, or where it's sourced, or how it's been grown. And so it's very a sort of disconnect from landscape in that way, in the way we've been taught ourselves to design a landscape is also very much based on this sort of how we live in the city, and how green becomes a very functional thing to look at, something aesthetic, and not functional as something you use on a day-to-day basis to harvest from, or even to sort of be more in tune with what kind of season is it, because in a supermarket there's no seasons.
Well, yeah.
Or hardly, yeah.
So this contrast between the artisanal and the industrial, and kind of the culture and the commodity that's called your attention. Just before we get further into this, there's something that caught my attention, that you both said that you had your own practices, and then this project came up. You noticed you had similar books, and there was like a common shared interest there, and then you started working together. And in my conversations with people, sometimes it comes up, this move from being an author to collectively create something, like to decentralize authorship from the individual and actually do it collectively. And it seems that it happened in a very smooth, gentle, friendly, warm way between you two. And which can you tell me a bit more about how, in terms of creative process, in terms of identity, how was that?
I think, in 2013, I realized that I was working in my studio on a daily basis, and I was spending many hours behind my computer. I was more active in the field of design at that time, and I thought, like, did I study so long to end up behind my screen for so many hours a day? Also realizing that I grew up on a tropical island in St. Martin, the Dutch Antilles, where I always spent my full day outdoor. I thought, I think I did something wrong. I want to spend more time outdoor. How can I realize that? And then at that time you were working for an artist collective in The Hague, the Satellietgroep.
Yeah, doing different kinds of projects more related to climate change and sea level rise and what it means for a country as the Netherlands, involving not only artists but also scientists, but also local communities to sort of create a platform to talk about these ideas and how art can generate a space where we can open up dialogue. But I started as an artist in this collective, and I was still at that time an artist, but I was also doing more and more organizational work, like applying to get project grants, initiating residencies for other artists. So also my work was more behind the screens. And then I saw Jomar just coming so clearly to life with having made this discovery with all the knowledge from his the books from your grandmother. And we both have a love and a passion for plants. And then I thought, I hardly do anything with plants at the moment. And as a side note, or on the side, I was always doing cooking jobs to make money. Because I have, apparently I have the skill for flavor, but also the skill for getting things organized.
I want to confirm that. I want to
It
check. I don't believe
kitchen.
it.
Yeah, it's good quality for chefing. But then at one point I was doing this art collective work and working as a chef, and I felt like, and then Jomar was making all these beautiful initiatives with the foraging of plants and trying to make more work out of this. And then I think it just at one point I think also I had to realize that we can achieve so much more together than on our own.
So I remember a day that I asked you if you would like to join me to the park. And to bring a shopping bag and to consider the park to be like also a supermarket. So we bought my grandmother's book and a shopping bag. We went to the park. We were staring to the berm,
the ground, all the vegetation.
The vegetation, exactly. And we started to recognize some of the plants that also were in my grandmother's book. We started to harvest some of those plants, and we found very interesting things that you would also find in a supermarket. So that was kind of interesting discovery. And there were lots of edible plants and the huge amounts. We even found wild asparagus next to the road, or a parsnip, wild parsnips, or I don't know,
lots of different herbs.
Herbs, yeah. So we got together, we got very enthusiastic.
And I think that sort of created the foundation to find a different view on your day-to-day environment.
And also the connection with your own living environment, even when you're living in a city. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. How did you, this is like a silly question, but it comes up. It's like in my work with Micah, we really go for the artists that are in the front line of like doing like pushing the boundaries of art today. And so like for me it's very, very obvious to see what you do as art. And but for some of the people that I talk to, they may come and ask me, and how come these guys noticed that harvesting like vegetables in the park was art, Like,
Yeah.
how did that process came to you? Say, well, actually, I'm doing an artwork here. This is like deserves. This is a subject of an artistic production that can be valued by museums or grounds. And how did that realization come to you?
Yeah, I think it's also a gradual realization, and I think we had for a long, I think 3 years, 2014, 13, 14, 15, we had a lot of time to just experiment from our own home, to work with the plants, work with the material, make all kinds of edible experiences with those plants. People really enjoyed it, but what people enjoyed the most were the different associations and the different connections we could make with stories that we would connect from, like, this is what we've been harvesting, this is how we've been preparing these plants, this is how we make a presentation as a tasting, and then we found out that all these stories that were developed around it created more opportunities for generating more knowledge or more curiosity with our audience. So we noticed we were getting an audience or a platform. And I think it was in 2015, when I was still working for this art collective, I invited Jan to do a series of walks, of explorations within the context of an art project.
Yeah.
And then we saw how much it could potentially relate to the art field. And I think it was around 2016, we were really more focusing on making it an artistic practice.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think up until that point, like in 2015, it was like this question: is this a very out of control hobby, or very out of control, or is this something we should embrace within our practice?
How did the art system, like the museums, galleries, artists, how do they, like, now that I heard how you went through this process, how did the other end receive it? Did they receive it as art, or they were challenged in the beginning? How did that work?
Well,
it's very mixed, huh?
Yeah, I think in 2016 we were really trying to bring this further. We were part of an art festival in the north of Amsterdam, and we had a very ambitious project that we set up. And we for this project we needed some funding to realize it. And with this project proposal, we applied to many different kinds of funding organizations, and we got €0. It all failed, because it was a project proposal about how you can interpret a landscape differently. How can you find traces of history in a landscape by looking at plants? For us it was a very big disappointment that there was no funding for this project, although we were strongly believing that it was an amazing project. Then this art festival that was that invited us, they helped us. They gave us a little bit of financial support to be able to realize this project in a smaller scale. And by getting that opportunity to work on this project, we didn't earn anything. We all put the support from the festival in the project. Showing the project to the people, organizing some exhibitions, and people were blown away. It was a very big success.
And then by coincidence, Jonmar like Jomar is very good at sort of owning or presenting work or talking very passionate about work. So one day he was very much like standing because it was a glass container on the festival terrain with a whole collection of materials, soil, water, plants, things that you could smell, taste, feel, and explaining a different story about this landscape. And it also, in addition, there was a tasting of products out of the landscape. And there was a curator from another arts organization. And she was so amazed that she straight away invited Jomar to come and think about a new project. So it was by meeting other people that saw potential that all of a sudden we also felt energy. And this was also the point where Jomar asked, like, I want to do this full time and together with you. And then I suggested it would be interesting to explore that in the field of art, because it would allow us a lot of opportunity to experiment and explore.
Yeah. And
in the beginning, I didn't really want to. I said
because you were also doubting if we could both live from the projects that we would do.
Yeah.
We together we decided that we would apply for some bigger projects with a little bit of money that we could both live from. And if one of those 3 applications that we made, if one of those 3 would succeed, then we could continue together. If not, then we would both go our separate ways. And then a couple of months later, all the applications got approved. So we were, so we were like, okay, that's interesting.
But the one that was really important, I think, for us was a residency in Maastricht at the Van Eyck Academy.
Oh, were you residents there?
Yeah. And I think that was really a turning point for us, because all of a sudden we had a very safe space with a lot of workshops, our own studio, 40 different other artists, philosophers, designers, writers, that were all together working there, developing their practice. And then we could clearly see this sort of like multidisciplinary approach of creating your own practice. And by getting a lot of studio visits from other gallerists or museum directors or other artists, you could kind of sense like, okay, there's some people in the art field that don't understand what you're doing yet, because it's not clearly, you're in the forefront of developing your work. And then we had really sharp discussions, because people also see that you've been accepted to this residency, so you get some credit. And at the same time, you also have to defend why you make your practice the way you do it, and why we choose to work with the plant as material, or the landscape, or a taste within our practice. And I think it really helped us to define more like what kind of artist we could become also with the work we do.
Yeah, interesting. One question just to round up the understanding of something that you said. You're applying for funds and you're not getting until you got one from an arts organization. These ones you did not get, were they applications to arts organizations or other kinds of organizations?
Mainly art organizations, but also in the Netherlands you have foundations that are more in between, more so the social cultural side of things.
Okay, so the art ones were the responded better. You were going for the social cultural ones, but the art ones were the ones that responded to your application better. So that was like a turning, like an aha moment. And now tell me, we're talking about doing radical work and doing funding, and you're in a shopping mall. So how these fit together?
I think, they go nicely, very nicely. I think this is also it's in the north of Amsterdam. It's a place that's for the past 10 years has been changing a lot. It's been really developing quite fast. we've been, I think, working in this side of the town also for 10 years, moving from to different studio spaces. But I think in this shopping mall we've been in, I think also 6 years maybe.
Oh, you've been there for 6 years.
Yeah, and this space we've now been here for almost 2
years.
2 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a space where a lot of shop owners struggle with making a living because of the type of products they sell. You mostly purchase them online, or it's something. It's very dated in a way. So we had the opportunity to occupy one of these shops. And what we really like is that our name, the Onkruidenier, it's also on the glass window of our studio. So people think it's a shop. People think we're a shop and that we have something to sell. And then when people come in, we tell them like we don't sell anything, but we share knowledge about wild plants and about we're artists. And then people really don't understand, but how can you live off this, or what is it that you do, and then some people do understand and they want to also learn or experience what we do with our work. And I think it makes it very grounded to be
it's
here.
a very unexpected kind of audience that we get here.
Yeah.
It's like you're preparing something.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
Do you have a gallery, and how do you have a gallery that represents you? And
no.
Okay. How do you think that would go? Like if the gallery knows you in a shopping mall, it's like would that have any sort of conflict, or would that kind of have a synergy? And
I don't know. Well, it's good to know that I think here in the shopping mall there are a couple of empty shops like we are in that are occupied by artists at the moment. So we are slowly becoming kind of community here. And
artists taking over retail space. That's not bad. It's a great story in itself.
It's a very interesting movement here. Yeah. And especially also in these times of Corona, a lot of shop owners have difficult times. I think us being here is a great solution.
And I think also so far we've like at the Van Eyck we met some people who also run a gallery, but it was also really with them we had most of the time really nice talks, but it was really difficult also for them to imagine, but also for ourselves, like what will we present within a gallery. I also remember that we met this gallerist from Sicily, who's more open into more also a practice that's more about ephemeral work in a way, or more about writing in your practice, or more making or almost being an activist in your practice. And also with him, we talked a lot about how you sort of, the work you normally do and the work you make, how do you find a new form of translation where it becomes interesting also for a gallerist?
You mean what do you collect? What do you take home? Is that what you mean? And
what people can buy or purchase, or and I think that's also for us still something. If that's something we aspire also, if that's something we want.
I think in our work we I think elements of storytelling, bringing also kind of sensory experiences to the work are also important elements in what we present and show. yeah. So I think therefore, yeah. Um, the landscapes that we have been doing our projects, also, and the organizations that we have worked with, they were also open to, yeah, other approaches to, yeah, show your work. Also, as an artist, being part of the work that is presented. But now, yeah, especially last year, we are slowly, yeah, I sense that we slowly transform also in our practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, last week we installed an art piece in public space in the city of IJsselstein near Utrecht, and yeah, presenting a work in public space also gives very different kinds of challenges or a context to your work. Yeah, slowly, yeah, we're exploring new ways of presenting our work. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. And I have a question. I mean, we're talking a lot about like identity politics and the colonial and post-colonial. This is like a subject that we can't avoid. And I don't know if it plays any part on you, but some of the material that we read associate this idea. We talked in the past, just a little while ago, about this thing of the artisanal and the industrial. And like me as a Brazilian, like in the colony, like some of the writings of the intellectuals that we read here, and associate this idea of the industrial with the Eurocentric version, and the artisanal with the colony. And so how, I don't know, does it play a part for you in any way, the fact that you were in Europe and you were like working with an artisanal practice?
Yeah. But I also know,
as a historical revision, or as a remedy, or just
I think
coincidence?
I think for us, how it started, it's this. The nice thing is that it's sort of revived through your family. So it's like also a close and personal connection, and then putting it into a contrast of a heavily industrialized world that we live in, where we also don't allow ourselves to have time to make these observations to small details that are going on in nature, or but it is all knowledge that was once common knowledge for everyone. And I think in the Netherlands it's been gone for quite some time, but if you move much more to the from Belgium to and then France to the south of Europe, or more to the east of Europe, you find that this sort of knowledge about different relationships towards using nature on a day-to-day basis is very different, where people still go forage because they need to, or because it's very common. People don't know any better. And I find it really difficult to sort of retrace this in the context of our own culture in the Netherlands. How this used to be, or how this once was really common. I think we've already are beyond that point that we actually know people when it was still really common. I think after the Second World War, where it was this sort of big turnover in creating a landscape that had to scale up, and where we no more scarcity of food. So there has to be an abundance of food for everybody at all times. And it has to be available for everyone. This sort of the scaling up of our food system in that time also created quite a disruption of this sort of more sensitive of enjoying to source for your ingredients, grow your own crops, cooking. And I think now in this time, in like also the last, maybe not only in this year, but also the time we've been developing our practice, a lot of people start to crave this sort of tactility almost, or this sort of experience, this sort of more artisanal way of experiencing the food or the things you have. But it's also, yeah, I remember really well when we started our practice, it was also very appealing for like a hype or a new culture, a sort of trendy culture, that all of a sudden our work was people from more design magazines or yeah, very hipster culture in Amsterdam sort of embraced the work we do. And it also felt really awkward in a way, because you want to make work that's very inclusive for everyone and not this sort of like very
trendy crowd.
high-end, trendy.
Yeah, yeah. So in a way, you were saying that is kind of this work is as much as I put in this kind of colonial, like artisanal, industrial. I think for you, is a way of retracing your own history and noticing inconsistencies of sustainability and reviewing that, isn't it? And now this is becoming, as much as we can talk about this colonial, post-colonial divide, it is becoming a sort of a global, like culture that unless we take care of it, we are all going to commit collective suicide.
Yeah, and I think also there's this sort of, for me, there's this sort of weird reverse also happening. Like in 2018, we had the opportunity during the Van Eyck residency to go to Taiwan for 4 months to live and work in Taiwan. And on the island of Taiwan, but we didn't know there's still a strong, the Dutch also had trading posts in the VOC times on the island, so they sort of I don't know, they kicked out Spanish and they occupied the island also for some times, and then we slowly, because people kept telling us this story, they kept telling of the multiple times of occupation on the island, and also how in recent anthropological studies, it's been pointed out that the indigenous people from Taiwan, of the island, are from the Polynesian branch. So, and there's a lot of different tribes on the island, and you could, on the east coast of the island, you still find a lot of these tribes and people that really have a lot of the local knowledge and the local culture still active. We had the opportunity to visit these people and how they have their own relationship with their environment and with landscape. And
yeah, so one of the guys, Imas, he was from a local tribe, and he kindly offered to guide us through the jungle. And he was telling us about all the knowledge from his grandparents and ancestors, how they would know from every part of a plant or tree that would grow there in their living environment, what they would do with it. It was very interesting to go there with him, seeing a lot of plants that we would normally buy at IKEA to decorate our home with. And then seeing them in the wilds, in the jungle, and hearing stories about, we make raincoats of these plants, or we use them when we have to walk for a long time because they contain a lot of water and we can drink out of the leaves, or we protect ourselves from the rain with those plants. so fascinating to see these different kinds of labels that are put on plants that are very culturally
depicted.
So they're used very differently.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing there's like 18 minutes to go, and so I wish we had longer, and I have lots of questions. Do you mind if we maybe share the screen, and maybe you talk us through maybe a couple of artworks you've done in the past, which you think are representative, you're proud of, and maybe something you're working now, if you're allowed to disclose, or I don't know, an exhibition, just a selection of things that you'd like to share. Let me, so you can share your screen if you like.
Maybe Forever Summer?
Daar was niet echt
Hoeveel?
Hebben we een portfolio dat we kunnen delen?
Let's have a look.
Okay.
And then we need to share the screen.
Yeah. Yes.
Share screen.
Share screen.
The desktop. Yeah.
Desktop.
Yeah.
Is it working? Oh ja, moet je aanvinken.
Ja. Oh no. Oh, we could walk around the studio. I don't think it's working to share the screen, but maybe we could show some things.
Did you find the button like share screen on the menu bar at the bottom?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think it's
desktop one or the fourth photo. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wait. Oh wait. I think it's working.
In mine, yeah. Now it's sharing.
Yay.
So become a salt-loving species.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
So this is on an island in the north of the Netherlands. It's called Terschelling, and once a year they have a big art festival called Oerol. And we've been doing a project in 2017, but also this is in 2019. And in the recent years, sort of investigation that keeps coming back is how Netherlands has this sort of weird relationship towards the sea. We need it, but again, we also fear it. But also the way we sort of engineered our landscape to build sea dikes and higher sort of water engineering works to keep the sea out of the country. At the same time, the sea normally brings sediments that sort of raises our land, but now that doesn't happen anymore. So our land is slowly sinking and the sea level is rising. So there's this sort of friction going on, and it's very difficult to measure with time or understanding this notion that that's happening, that how the way we arranged our landscape, it won't last forever. And because we're a nation that controls things to such a high extent, I think it's very difficult to open discussion about how our landscape is changing, and how we could, instead of keep changing the landscape to protect ourselves from the sea, how we could change ourselves as a species towards the sea, or either sort of looking at the sea from a position it like from a mental state of being, and then maybe also start acting differently in a landscape. And this is on the wrong part of the sea dike, in a space that it floods like twice a day, so with the ebb and flow. And it's a landscape where a lot of mud or clay has been deposited, and slowly the land is rising. And we decided during the festival for 10 days to start occupying this bit of land, and start investigating and seeing how the landscape or the land is changing, who's also using, what kind of animals, what kind of crabs or birds or microorganisms are there, and how it would change our perception of like living with the rhythm of the tides instead of living with the time of the clock. So the sort of the economical clock time, so, and the circadian rhythm, so the rhythm of the biology, how those two would work together.
You talked interesting. So yeah, so you I think basically it's like instead of adapting the sea to our convenience, let's adapt us to the sea's natural cycles. And one question that comes to me, we talked about interdisciplinarity in a little while ago, and what's the role of interdisciplinarity in this artwork? Like, did you do with like ecologists, environmentalists, anthropologists? Like, is besides art, who did you collaborate with to come up with this piece?
Yeah, I think when we start working in a landscape, we believe it's very important to try to understand the landscape through the eyes of the users of the landscape. So we always try to create a kind of expert pool around ourselves. For example, we always enjoy working together with farmers, because they always have very interesting kind of knowledge that is mostly brought from father to son, and that for centuries. We work together with people that live in a certain landscape, or that are working for a nature reserve organization, or ecologists, botanists. So we try to create different kinds of perspectives on the landscape from different kinds of disciplines, and we bring those kind of meetings or collaborations with people together also in the story that we want to share.
How do you find these people, and how do you establish the partnership with them?
Yeah, I think it's also sometimes they're very slow, people, like for example at a university in Groningen, we now work with a scientist Mans, and he I don't know, he's a landscape historian, but he also knows a lot about archaeology and about the ancient living forms with the sea, but he needs sort of, he really likes art, and the perspective art brings him, so he can sort of broaden his scope to also view his own work in a different light, because sometimes he's also stuck in a sort of dogma of working in a certain way. And we sort of, by every now and then, we met him once at a talk, and then we got into, it was at a conference, and then we got into a conversation, and now he's sort of one of these people that we every now and then speak to or involve.
Yeah, and we find a kind of shared interest in in setting up test environments. So he, as a scientist, he needs sometimes space to do experiments, but he always has to,
you have to verify within the parameters
test location
of the science. He needs to be strict to the boundaries of science, but sometimes you need to go beyond those boundaries. And I think over the years we've sort of met people that like to work in this sort of gray area, and that's where you sort of can start working on an interdisciplinary way, or whether it's a farmer who wants to know more about these local herbs that grows on his terrain, or a fellow artist.
Well, the picture is saying details of a performance installation. What is this, like this disc, like she's holding, and what design that of this stuff that she's carrying, this blue kind of kit, it's comes from? Tell me about this.
Yeah, so for being in the landscape for 10 days, we one of the things we started to look at was the microorganisms that are found in the mud. And when it's the water is covering the mud, not much is happening within the mud itself. And then when the tide goes out, like the microorganisms, biotoms that are in the mud, they can start activating their with the sun photosynthesis, and they have a skeleton made out of silica. And when you look on the microscope, they're beautifully round with little holes, and they're beautiful little creatures. And the disc Rosanne is holding is a sort of blown up version.
Yeah. We found it very fascinating to realize that when the water, when the water was away, the seawater was away, that all these microorganisms would go to the surface to catch the sun and produce sugar. So 2 times a day we were looking at a very big sugar plantation on the bottom of the sea. And we found it very interesting to see the connection between sweet and salt in the landscape. And it became a very important topic of research in our practice. The relationship between sugar and salt in the landscape, but also in our body, and how the landscape and body is connected to each other.
In our habits, in our culture, like every meal we need some sugar, do we?
Yeah, they're very flavor-giving things. Yeah.
You said this disc was blown up, and can this disc be used, or is it like a design piece that has a symbolic meaning, or can you actually put it?
More like a tool or a design piece that had a symbolic value, where. But also a way of tracking the movement of the sun. So we would move around with the disc and then position it towards the sun, so it would create reflections. So it was also a way of telling time, or and a form of communicating with the audience. So it was also sort of a mediator in that way.
It's not a tool to find the microorganisms.
No. It was more like also being there for 10 days. Carrying an instrument that would also help us fantasizing about how we as humans could evolve into a salt-loving species, when we would in the future maybe live more with the sea together and embrace the sea more. So it was also more like this personal experience that we would get during those 10 days.
So it nurtures an imagination. It's not like a tool. It's
exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And some people, it's kind of like a cliche, but some people say that the artists, or maybe it's true, and that the artists are like the visionaries, like they anticipate something that history will then unfold. And if that's the case, what would you say art can teach us about the new normal?
I think that's a very beautiful bridge to the next projects that we could maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Great,
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah,
Let's
Go
go.
for it. Go for it.
I think, Sweet Beds, the project that we have been working on already for a couple of years, since 2015. It brings together, we see this work as a kind of ecosystem, and it brings together different kinds of storylines, different kinds of connections, personas that we invite in the ecosystem, that we that we bring in touch with each other in a kind of dialogue. I think realizing how things are deeper connected to each other than we would think on first sight. I think it also develops and helps creating a more complex understanding of our living environments, and how I think what I'm trying to say is that what we as humans like to do, tend to do, is verkleinen, controle krijgen over.
Sometimes make things a bit smaller, or simplify, or reduce. It's a form of reduction.
Exactly. Yes. So sometimes when we try to understand what is going on in our living environment, in nature, or in the world, we have the tendency to reduce it, instead of maybe embracing the complexity. How we deal with the corona crisis in our work. I don't know.
But I think it's also
very connected to ecosystem thinking.
Yeah, but also allowing sometimes to. I think that's why also we work a lot with a lot of experts to create different voices within the. I think that's why, the work started initially with the two of us, but now also Rosanna is part of the collective. So we start to become more and more of a collective, and I think this sort of approach within the art, where we sort of look for not a one voice, but a series of different, creating an environment where many different voices can be shown, and that also shows a sort of beauty or a complexity for new ways of understanding, and that is okay. That it's not about creating one answer or one insight. And that it's also allowed to change. I think also with us, like creating a work of art that functions as an ecosystem, also allows it ourselves in the position, a sort of freedom where we can keep changing the work,
keep exploring the work, keep creating and discovering new meanings or understandings. Yeah.
Amazing. Can you go back to the previous image? I have a question.
Sure.
How do you conceive, in terms of the formal qualities of this work, that you see kind of this grading of colors, and did you take the food that was naturally available and organize it by color, and or did you conceive the colors and chase the food? Is there anything to do with nutrition? My nutritionist said once that like your plate should have several colors, and that would mean several like nutrients. And
I think with this work, it's good to know that we were creating this for 3 days, And we ourselves, Rosanne, Ronald, and I, were constantly performing in two spaces that were connected to each other. And the composition of bottles, straps, vegetables, tools, and the materials that we were using, it was constantly changing. So we were constantly responding to the movements that we were activating. So in this picture, I think this was on the last day of the ecosystem. Many different kinds of compositions have been before this image.
Right. So it's what's left over of the performance, and
but the different colors. We as a new type of landscape that we started to investigate was the supermarket, and how sugar and salt are represented, and sugar mainly through colors. And the vegetables are mainly in the family of root vegetables and beetroot. And beetroot is also the main supply of sugar in the Netherlands. So it sort of, and then it was a coincidence that we found a beautiful farmer that could grow all these beautiful colored vegetables.
Yeah. And what are in these bottles? What is inside them?
Very horrid, sugary lemonades that you would find in the supermarket that are mainly just sugar with a color.
I think
you took out the labels just to emphasize the color.
The color, yeah.
I think the starting point of our collaboration also with Rosanne, the third member of the Onkruidenier, was that she proposed us to go on an expedition to the supermarket. And we
and search for the face of sugar.
Yeah. And we got very enthusiastic about that proposal. So we went with her to the supermarket, the Albert Heijn, and we spent 3 hours counting colors of how sugar would appear. And we bought a lot of bottles and powders, etc. And in the end, we counted 68 different colors for sugar.
Wow!
And it became an element in the installation. Yeah.
This is the perfect friend for you, because you had suggested the expedition to the park to find, I think, edible. Did you suggest an expedition to the park in the beginning of the conversation you were telling us?
Yes.
So it's like a history goes around.
Yeah. Keeps coming back. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we are coming we passed our time, and I mean, I don't know, any final remarks, anything you'd like to show before we end, and it's over to you. And
yeah.
No.
Don't know. Yeah. I think what we have realized in the last few years is that the connection between landscape, plants, the cultural stories or identity that we can find in landscapes together with local experts. Yeah, it has become an important element in how we create our work. Working more and more with cultural organizations, museums, bringing those landscapes now also more and more in dialogue with each other, which is also very exciting, I think.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You're going to say something?
Yeah, I think also that it's really nice that how I sort of see the art world at the moment change a lot. There's a lot more room for diversity and space for a lot of different approaches, and I think yeah, what we do is one of those approaches to do things in our own way. And I think, yeah, that's I think such a good and healthy development also. Like the last time when we were in the meeting with each other, that so many people created a different relationship from the point of food, from their art perspective. It's very, yeah, it gives me a lot of joy also, being able to create something that you can also share and learn from with other people.
Yeah.
And that this sort of also this sort of collective approach, that it's not necessarily only the status of the studio artist that is the genius that makes brilliant work. It's more embedded in real life.
Yeah, very good point. It's the persona of the artist changed a lot, isn't it? It used to be like this selfish, vain, like egocentric, eccentric, introspect, and now it is almost like an invisible person who is kind of facilitating different realities and like better. It's great. Well, thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. I learned a lot, and
good to hear.
Yeah.
And we'll keep in contact. Maybe when I'm over to Holland, when we come to Brazil, we'll try and meet in person.
Yeah. If you're here, please, you're always welcome. It would be great. And hopefully, who knows? I think, we've never been to South America, so it's, I think we're at the moment we're doing a big project on tomatoes.
Okay.
It's also the origin of the tomato is
in South America.
So,
all right.
Yeah. So I think
amazing. Let's keep in
very
touch.
much on the list.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you both. Was great. Thank you so much.
Yes. Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, have a good day.
Yeah.
All the best.
Let's keep in touch. Okay.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.